Right here. Right there where you hit it, nigga.
I got black, I got white, what you want?
Yeah, nigga, I should beat the fuck out you more, nigga.
I know I'm about to blow.
Yeah, nigga, clean all that shit. Nigga, what's your fucking problem, nigga? What's your problem, nigga? I should split your other side, cuz. Oh, me, nigga.
I know.
What, you racist, nigga, or what?
Oh my gosh.
Oh!
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I guess we don't get too close.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
He wanted the phone. What's it gonna do with the phone?
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now we have to start understanding we don't have any other choice but to defend ourselves. It's no secret they have no problem spilling our blood, but we still act surprised and we still ask and beg for justice. The only time we should be marching is to pay respects to our ancestors, but marching for justice is not going to get us anywhere. They control every aspect of our lives, and that alone should make us want to stand up. We're so worried about how they think of us and them judging us. But when you understand all the things they have done to us and continue to do, then there's nothing wrong with being mad. We try to avoid the stereotype, but understanding history, we should be mad. They don't care how it looks, they get mad over everything. And that's just to maintain the position they're in. But we are the ones that should be mad when you look at history and things like the Slocum Massacre of 1910. Now this massacre started because white people started spreading rumors about a black uprising in retaliation for all the lynchings they had done. So the white society planned on ethnically cleansing the uppity Negroes. And before the massacre, a group of white boys saw a black girl down by the creek. So they started assaulting this black girl and dunking her head under the water until she confessed that the black community was planning an uprising. Now they were making up the story, they were just forcing her to confess to it. They made her admit the black community was waiting for whites to go to church to attack them, and were going to kill them all. So then one day, a group of 5 black teenagers were just walking down the street minding their own business when a group of armed white boys saw them and just opened fire on them for no reason. One young brother, Clive Larkin, was shot and killed, and another young brother was shot, but they got away and hid in the swamp. Not long after the shooting, the mob grew to around 50, and then they started raiding the black communities. And they tried to kill any black man, woman, or child they came across. And as the mob kept attacking the black community, they grew to around 200 to 300. And they went from home to home attacking unarmed black people for no reason. The sheriff at the time reported whites were going around killing Negroes as fast as they could and without any cause. And that's from the white sheriff. And as many of the unarmed black residents tried to run, they were shot in the back. And the killing went on through the whole night. They said they cut down telephone wires and hunted the Negroes like sheep, while the white women and children were safe in schools and churches. And they said several white men shot 16 to 18 black people who came anywhere near the church. And of course the papers framed it as a race war instead of what it was, a massacre. And when the Texas Rangers and the state militia finally came in, the whole towns were already empty. And the only people that were left behind were the people that couldn't leave. And the bodies of a lot of dead people, including the elderly and the children. Now, they reported anywhere from 8 to 22 people have been killed, but the actual number is more likely over 200, and probably a lot more than that. Now, 7 people were actually charged for the riots, but of course nobody was actually punished. And every black resident who could leave town had to leave town. And a lot of the resentment came from black people actually starting to do good for themselves around this time. They were owning land, they were owning businesses, because they had no other choice. They wasn't suffering from the illusion of inclusion. They had to support each other. But as they supported each other and built the economic base, the white community became mad, jealous, and they attacked them. They ran them off their land and then took control of the land. And some of that land ended up having oil. And who knows how many wealthy black families there could have been if they hadn't been massacred and ran out of Slocum, Texas. And today, all these years later, we still haven't learned self-defense. They can do anything they want to us and get away with it. In Fort Worth, Texas, a brother, David Collie, who was minding his own business, was shot in an apartment complex by police. Now let's see what led the police to end up shooting this brother within 10 seconds.
Well, tonight, police in Fort Worth, Texas, are defending the actions of 2 officers who shot a man last summer. His lawyers say the man posed no threat to them. Video of the shooting has just been released. Omar Villafranca has details.
The dashcam video from July of this year shows a Fort Worth police officer and a Tarrant County sheriff deputy responding to a robbery call. The 2 off-duty uniformed officers approached David Collie in an apartment parking lot. One pulls out a flashlight, the other his gun. There's no audio on the footage, but police say they told Collie to stop and show his hands. A few seconds later, the officer fired twice, leaving Collie crumpled on the ground. Nate Washington is Collie's attorney.
I see an attempted murder. I see an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
Investigators say the officer shot Collie after he spotted a silver object in his hand and thought it was a gun. It turned out to be a box cutter. Collie spent weeks in the hospital, and since he was charged with assault, he was cuffed to a bed. The 33-year-old can't move his legs.
He couldn't move anything other than his arms, but they have him chained to the bed.
This is the second video that has angered some members of the community. Last week, a video was released showing a woman arrested by a Fort Worth police officer after she called police to report her son had been choked by a neighbor. Washington says he released this tape to show these are not isolated incidents.
I'm not saying that these officers were racist, but that racial bias caused the officer to believe that perhaps he should be afraid of Mr. Collie.
Collie was never accused in the robbery, and the assault charge was later dropped. As for the officer who shot Collie, he was put on paid administrative leave in July. But Elaine, Fort Worth police tell us he is now back on duty.
Now, this brother David Collie was outside in an apartment complex committing the crime of not having a shirt on when 2 cops, a Fort Worth cop who the police would only identify as H Barron, and another cop who they didn't identify at all, even though they were both off duty, they were just working as security guards with their whole uniform on. But they claimed they were looking for 2 shirtless black men that had just committed some robbery somewhere. And because this brother didn't have a shirt on, it had to be him. So the cop, H Barron, pulls out his gun while the other cop pulls out his flashlight. And this brother was walking away, and he may have been talking to the cops, but there's no audio. But it looked like he was pointing at something. And he wasn't even pointing directly at the cops. But the police say he refused to show his hands and then reached in his pocket and pulled out a silver object, and they thought it was a gun. And then he pointed it at the police. Now, it turns out to be a box cutter that he used for work. And on top of that, he said he never even pulled it out. And why would you pull out a box cutter and point it at the cops who got a gun on you? But this cop, H Barron, said he feared for his life, so he shot him in the back within 10 seconds of talking to him. And the other cop wasn't even expecting it. He didn't even see a threat. That's why he jumped back when he shot him. He didn't know what was going on. But this cop, H Barron, shot this brother in the back, and now he's paralyzed for life.
I can't say, well, what did I do wrong? I drive myself crazy thinking that.
And for the first time, a Fort Worth man is speaking out about the officer seen on dash camera video shooting him as he was walking away. Thanks for joining us at 6. I'm Doug Dunbar.
And I'm Kaylee O'Kelly, now paralyzed. David Collie says he decided it was time to tell his side of the story, and he spoke exclusively to Jack Fink, who joins us now in studio. What is he saying, Jack?
Well, Kaylee and Doug, David Collie is now in a nursing home, and Fort Worth police say the officer-involved shooting was justified, but Collie says he believes the officer who shot him made a mistake.
It's hard, but what keep me moving forward is the fact that I'm still alive.
David Collie fought back tears nearly 6 months after an officer's bullet left him paralyzed from the waist down.
Because it's like they paint a dirty picture, and that's not the truth.
Dash camera video shows the shooting last July. Fort Worth police say Collie didn't comply with the commands of one of their officers and a Tarrant County sheriff's deputy who were both searching for 2 shirtless robbery suspects. Police say their officer shot Collie, who didn't have a shirt on, after he pointed a silver object at the deputy.
But I did hear him say, he's like, take your hand out your pocket. I did hear that. So in my mind, I'm like, just my recollection of it is like trying to be like, okay, look, like trying to show you, like, look at my hand, like, look.
The officers say they thought Collie had a gun, but it was Collie's box cutter. He says he used it for work and insists he kept it hidden.
Stayed in your pocket.
In my pocket, man. In my pocket the whole time.
But police say they found the box cutter on the ground. A spokesman says Internal Affairs said the officer's shooting was justified.
you can't think of anything that you would do differently.
I can't.
Collie says he believes the officer made a mistake when he shot him.
Let's just acknowledge the fact that we made a mistake, and and you know, for me, I can move forward. I can accept it.
Now, Collie does have a record that includes evading arrest, a state jail felony. Police say the officer was not disciplined and is back on patrol. The DA's office will soon ask a grand jury to decide whether this officer in this case should face charges. A grand jury declined to indict Collie on a charge of aggravated assault on a public servant. Collie says he's considering a lawsuit.
Now, mind you, they never even charged his brother David Collie with the robbery or even questioning him about it. But they did end up charging him with aggravated assault on the officer. And even though he was paralyzed and could only move his arms, they had him handcuffed to the bed. But after the video came out, a grand jury decided not to indict him because they had no other choice. This man was paralyzed within 10 seconds of the cops talking to him, and they charged him with aggravated assault. Meanwhile, this cop, H Barron, or this other cop was never charged or punished. They got their paid vacation and they're right back on the streets. And now this brother David Collie talking about, all I want is them to acknowledge what they did and say they're sorry and just admit they're wrong. But we don't want no apology. We want justice. And you can't get justice by begging for an apology. And this happens time after time and we still act surprised. Like the situation with Eric Garner.
Federal prosecutors will not bring charges against a New York City police officer involved in the 2014 death of Eric Garner. Garner died after being placed in a chokehold by Officer Daniel Pantaleo. He was trying to arrest Garner for selling untaxed cigarettes outside a Staten Island convenience store. The incident was captured on cell phone video where Garner can be heard telling officers, quote, "I can't breathe." U.S. Attorney General William Barr made the final decision, and it comes one day before the 5-year anniversary of Garner's death, when the statute of limitations was set to expire. Earlier, federal prosecutors explained their decision.
When we evaluated Officer Pantaleo's actions in light of his training and experience, Mr. Garner's size, weight, and actions to resist arrest, and the duration and escalating nature of the interaction, we determined that was insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Pantaleo acted in willful violation of federal law. As a result, we concluded there is insufficient evidence to bring a federal criminal charge against Officer Pantaleo for his role in the untimely death of Mr. Garner.
Well, Garner's mother and daughter expressed outrage over the announcement.
They were telling us that the statute of limitations run out tomorrow. But as I know the law book, there's no statute of limitations for murder. There will be justice, and we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to keep fighting. We're not going away, so you can forget that. You think it's swept under the rug? No, it's not going to be swept under the rug, because I'm out here, you all know my face, and you're going to see it even more now. Because this is an outrage, an insult to injury. You killed my son, and you won't get away with it.
We called the Department of Justice. They didn't do their job. So no, I'm gonna stand outside and I'm gonna scream it. Pantaleo needs to be fired. He needs to be fired. There is no waiting. There is no nothing. The statute of limitation ends tomorrow. Eric died 7/17/14. We're 7/16/19. 5 years later and there's still no justice.
The city medical examiner's office ruled the death a homicide in the days after the incident and testified that Pantaleo's alleged chokehold caused an asthma attack and was a contributing factor in Garner's death. Pantaleo denies that he used a chokehold. A Staten Island grand jury declined to indict NYPD officer Daniel Pantaleo on any state criminal charges 4 months after Garner's death. The NYPD brought Pantaleo up on departmental charges earlier this year. An administrative judge has not ruled whether the officer violated policy. He could face dismissal, but Police Commissioner James O'Neal has the final say. Garner's death sparked mass protests in New York City and across the country over police use of force on unarmed black men. Garner's last words, "I can't breathe," became a battle cry for activists.
Now, it shouldn't be no surprise this cop Daniel Pantaleo or any of the cops weren't going to be punished. And even though the coroner ruled he died by being choked to death, the cop denied he ever put him in the chokehold. And the police said there's not enough evidence to charge him. Forget what your eyes see in the video. They said there's no evidence. And even though there isn't supposed to be a statute of limitation on murder, I guess that doesn't apply to a slave catcher and black people. And apparently the statute of limitations for that is 5 years. And even though the statute of limitation was about to be over in a few days, and they could have tried to let it go by quietly, but instead they chose to send a message and let it be known that the Attorney General, William Barr, justifies this murder and clears him of all charges. They wait till the statute of limitation is almost over and then clear him of murder, as if they weren't going to do that the whole time. But at the end of the day, this brother is dead over cigarettes, and the only person to go to jail was the person who filmed the murder. But at this point, what else do we expect? We are all we got, and until we stop it, then it's going to continue to happen.
Well, some scary moments caught on tape. A Lucas County Sheriff's deputy in uniform has a gun pulled on him by a security guard.
And now that security guard faces criminal charges as the deputy tries to wrap his head around almost being killed in what should have been a very basic situation. I-Team reporter Sean Haggerty with the video you'll only see on 13 ABC. Sean.
Yeah, that deputy came here to Fort Seagate to ask a question at the IRS office, a step that almost cost him his life. As Lucas County Sheriff's Deputy Alan Gaston enters the IRS office, he's in full uniform with his badge and his firearm visible. He's on duty May 31st, but says he stopped at the office for a phone number to ask about a letter he got from the IRS. Deputy Gaston says the guard told him he needed to put his gun in his car. Gaston said he couldn't do that. The conversation ends with a gun pointed at the deputy's back. Gaston vividly remembers that moment.
Basically preparing myself to be shot at that moment, bracing for a shot in my back.
The whole thing caught on security camera as the guard follows Deputy Gaston to the elevator with the gun out, and it appears his finger very close to the trigger. The guard then tries to take Gaston into custody, once again with the gun drawn.
There's really no way to know how you're going to act when there's a gun pointed at you and when you think you're going to lose your life.
Gaston works as a defensive tactics instructor. He says he felt the best way to de-escalate this situation was to walk away. Eventually, Toledo police arrived after getting a 911 call.
He's got a gun and he won't leave.
But the caller from inside the IRS office never tells 911 the man with the gun is a uniformed deputy sheriff. Gaston's biggest concern as this incident unfolded were the other people inside the office.
If I'm going to get shot, which I felt like I was, it's not fair. They came there to do their business.
Gaston and his wife have now filed a civil lawsuit against the security guard, Seth Eklund, and the security company, seeking compensation after Gaston allegedly suffered emotional and psychological distress and lost wages. He's currently on medical leave from the Lucas County Sheriff's Department. He has a message for that security guard.
I would say clearly your training is lacking, and the fact that you went from 0 to 100 lethal force is unacceptable.
That security guard, Seth Eklund, is now facing a charge of aggravated menacing. He's due in court next week. We tried to reach out to him today, but could not contact him. We also reached out to the IRS for a comment today, but we've not yet heard back.
You taking your authority so motherfucking far. You wanna make switch now, motherfucker? You wanna make switch?
Hey, I got you.
Get up, go up, now. You're cuffing me.
I am. Get the fuck down. Nobody hit me. I want you to get shot.
Oh, he got a gun.
Yeah. Sir, you can't do that. You strong arming her.
Sis, you want me to call the police?
Call the police and tell them he's forcing her against her own will. He tried to run her over.
She just hit his car.
With her bag.
Oh hell no! What the
bite her.
Yo, hell.
You can't bite her.
Oh, hell no.
You can't bite her.
This man is beating up this lady.
I know, I seen that shit too.
Get the fuck off of her. Come on, thank you. Get the fuck off of her right now. Why are you hitting on her? Why are you hitting her?
Because she hit my daughter.
Stop hitting her. Get off her first. Get off her first. Get off of me. We're going to call the police. Get off her first. Listen, we're going to call the police.
Hey, get the fuck down. Nobody hit me. Nobody.
You gotta. This man just pulled a gun out on us.
Nobody hit me.
I got the whole video already. Can you call the police? Can you call the police? I got the video already. Can you call them? You pulled your gun out on us, sir. I'm calling the police.
No, I showed it to you.
You pulled it out.
There's a bunch of people.
I'm calling the police.
She's hitting him and he's trying to hold her. She's trying to leave.
You just pulled out. You pulled a gun out. You pulled the gun out.
I did.
You pulled the gun out, sir. The police on their way. You hurt on onto her bag. You pulled the gun out. You pointed it at the three of us.
I did not.
Yes, you did. I got you on camera pointing your gun at us.
They're here.
You pointed your gun at us.
I gotta go to work.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let her go.
Get off of me.
Let her go.
Let her off of me.
Let her go. She's not going anywhere, sir. The police are right there. They're gonna see a girl running. See, she's right here. You okay?
Yeah.
What
You
the
hit
fuck?
me several times.
You did not have a right to pull your gun out on her.
I just showed it to you because people,
Give me my keys.
people are coming after me.
Give me my keys.
She's hit me. You people are coming.
No.
There's people
I'll get
yelling
your
at me.
keys.
Give me my car keys. He tried to bite me.
I'm not gonna leave. I'm not. Okay. He got a gun.
He got my keys.
He got a gun. He has a gun, sir. He's got a gun and he pointed it out at us. Sir, he's got a gun. Oh no! He got a gun.
He pulled that gun on me.
He pulled the gun out on us, sir.
He put the gun in my face. He put that gun in my face.
I have a video. He put the gun in our face. Come on. Sir, this man put a gun in our face. I have a video.
Walk this way, okay?
Can you get this girl?
All right, thank you.
Bro, chill! Get in the car! I am! You hurt my arm, stupid bitch! The fuck?
Yep.
Break your leg.
Bro, you can't punch me!
Put your leg in.
Put your leg in.
Don't punch me!
Put your leg
Put your leg in the car.
No, bitch, don't punch me!
She's 16 years old. She's 16 years old and you're punching a child right now. It don't matter if her foot don't want to go in the car. None of that.
Put your leg in the car. Is it really worth this?
Go!
Yes, bro, because I didn't do nothing!
Put your leg in the car then.
No. Like, what the fuck going on? They punching on a little ass girl.
Weak ass motherfuckers can't even pick my leg up.
Why do you want to fight like this?
Bro, cause why is y'all doing all this?
Put your leg in the car, like we told you 100 times.
This shit fucked up, bro. It don't matter what she did. The crime is
Do it right now.
Bro, get the fuck off of me.
Yo. You're about to break her foot.
Put your foot in the car.
Let her fucking
Put
foot
your
go.
foot in the car.
Let her foot go. Let her
your
go.
foot in the
Record this
car.
shit, yo. Record this shit. Let her foot go. You about to break her foot.
Get
That's a
back.
child. I'm not doing nothing to you. I'm not doing nothing to you.
You got it over there?
I'm not touching you. You about to break that lady, that little girl foot. Bro,
Your badge number is 4.
can I get all the badge numbers? Can I get the badge numbers? I give you my name. You feel me? I give y'all my name. Can I get your name? Can I get your number? Can I get a card? That's a child. That's a baby. Huh? Oh, no, nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody wants to talk to me.
That's my car. Why? I know my rights. Why are you taking me?
3 different eyewitnesses shared 3 different cell phone videos with Pix 11 of a police-involved shooting here on Summit Avenue and West 166th Street. You can hear the 2 shots fired by police. It was just after 7 p.m. Witnesses say police stopped a man in his 50s who they say had his arm inside a car, and they say he told police it was his car, that he was not breaking in. That's when witnesses say there was a tussle, a struggle with police as they wrestled the man to the ground and the shots were fired.
I seen a tense conversation between the police officers and that one guy, and then it was a tussle. They had him on the ground, they handcuffed him. Out of nowhere, it was shots fired. They shot him in the arm.
Police say the suspect had a firearm and was shot in the chest and rushed to Lincoln Hospital, where he's in critical condition. After the shots were fired, you can see on the videotape other police officers pull the officer with the gun away from the victim.
You don't have to just use a gun. It's a such thing as a non-lethal items. You know what I'm saying? You got stun guns, you have sticks. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to do all that. He was already on the ground. He was already laying there.
They were beating him up like there's no tomorrow. And then when he kept resisting, the guy took his pistol and he shot him twice.
Did you see a firearm of his?
The guy, no, he was on the floor. The guy only had his key.
Suspect saying, I quote, "I have a gun. Explicitive, die." It is at this point one officer discharged his service weapon 2 times, striking the individual in the torso and the hip. A loaded 9mm Ruger was recovered.
Cops race into action after a 911 caller says this home has just been broken into.
The house is for sale, but it's not an open house today. And I just seen 2 male black subjects force the front door open.
An officer calls out to the 2 men he can see inside the house.
Guys, come on out.
As cops approach with guns drawn, the suspect emerges.
Hands up!
Hands up, what y'all doing?
Tell your friend to come out too. Hands up.
Then the other guy comes out.
Well, people saw you forcing your way in. That's why we're here.
But a big surprise is about to happen.
I'm a realtor.
That's right. Turns out he's a realtor, and he's interested in buying the house. The men are cuffed, and the prospective buyer has this to say.
We was white, though, y'all.
We would do the same thing. Quit playing the race card, okay?
Their stories checked out, and the men were let go.
Sorry about that, sir. We can only go by what's reported to us.
This is the neighbor who called 911, and he turns out to be a retired cop.
Better be safe, sir.
Now the realtor and his client are suing the city of Cincinnati, claiming they were illegally detained. Jerry Isham has been a realtor for 32 years. Were you confused why they were there?
Well, yeah, I just did not believe that the police were there for us.
Police union spokesman Daniel Hills insists the officers acted correctly.
The idea being pushed out that this is a racial thing is absolutely silly. To handcuff somebody that is potentially a felon is the proper thing to do. It makes everybody safer.
I had a question for Anthony Edwards, the would-be purchaser. Did you end up buying the house, Anthony?
Well, no.
Just before airtime, the city of Cincinnati told us they have settled with the realtor and his customer and regret what they call an unfortunate and unnecessary situation. The 2 men will receive $151,000. Cops and other city employees will be receiving training.
So we're out here protesting. You think that's okay?
I think he thinks it's okay. I think he's choking on his life.
It only took one person to disrupt this peaceful rally. Protesters visibly shaken, moments after the masked student was taken into custody.
I really wanted to break down and cry, but you can't do that. You have to be strong.
ETSU President Dr. Brian Noland praising students for how they responded.
I do not know if I would have had the temperament, the patience, or the courage to respond as they did.
The president tells me students were protesting at a spot that's historic for the university. This site is dedicated to the 5 people who desegregated the school back in the 50s. And the president says this student does not represent those values or the university.
And we're going to do everything we can to ensure that this is not what we're remembered for.
University officials swiftly organizing a community meeting.
We need to be open and talk about race.
And even more quickly, the conversations started flowing.
Why do such sentiments still exist in this day and age? And how do we proactively and positively and respectfully talk to one another about how to move forward positively?
I talked to the student taunted in these videos. He calls this meeting just one of the good things to come out of a nightmare.
I didn't expect any of this to happen, and just the fact that it did just shows that somebody's actually on our side.
So now it's up to everyone on campus to make the next move.
What we're going to be remembered as a university for is how we respond.
Dr. Nolan said there will be more discussions just like this one, and students tell me they plan to hold their peaceful protest again tomorrow.
Just hit me.
Come on outside. What's that, Doctor? What's that?
All right, and we back on the forecast. Now, at some point, we are going to have to learn how to defend ourselves. Over the last 500 years, that has been something we have failed to do. We have to protect our children. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect our women. We have to protect ourselves. You can't let outsiders come in and terrorize your women and children. Historically, the dominant society has attacked us under the guise of protecting white women. And that's one thing we can learn from them. They have killed so many people and destroyed so many of our communities under the guise of protecting white women. If we start to implement the same thing, we wouldn't be in the same situation that we are in now. Yet all we try to do is reason and pray and ask them to change. Meanwhile, these are the same group of people that have done things like a racial cleansing, like in Georgia in 1912. White mobs chased every black person out of Forsyth County after they kept committing terrorist acts on the black community. And like many of these massacres, it started over white women. In one case, a white girl, Ellen Grice, falsely accused 2 black men of trying to rape her. Now, she most likely made it up because she was bloodthirsty and to increase racial tensions. But she ended up accusing 2 black men, Tony Howell and Isaiah Perkle, and they were arrested along with 3 other black men, Fate Chester, Johnny Bates, and Joe Rogers, and they were all taken to Forsyth County Jail. So then the lynch mob tried to storm the jail, but the police locked these brothers in a vault and they couldn't get to them. So then the local preacher, Grant Smith, was simply accused of saying the white woman lied after she got caught with the black man, which was most likely the truth because white women have historically lied on black men in a heartbeat. But the mob took this preacher in front of the courthouse and then beat him with a horsewhip until he almost died. But of course, nobody was ever charged for it. Then a few days later, another white woman, Still May Crow, ended up getting beat up and murdered. And they accused a young brother named Ernest Knox of committing the crime. They claimed this young brother, Ernest Knox, hit her from behind, drug her in the woods, and then raped her. And then hit her with a large stone, crushing her skull, killing her. And eventually he was arrested. And they ended up taking him to a jail a few counties away to avoid a mob. So then the police used what they call a mock lynching to make him confess to the crime. Well, the police basically get people like a lynch mob and put a rope around his neck and threaten to hang him if he don't confess. And if he doesn't, they'll eventually hang him anyway. And as the word got out, the mob started to gather at the jail and they had to take him to Atlanta for his own safety. So the next day, 3 more people were arrested. A brother named Rob Edwards, a brother named Oscar Daniel, and a sister named Jane Daniel. And they told Jane Daniel they'll give her a plea deal if she testified against Rob Edwards and her brother, and if she testified against the brother Ernest Knox. But before they could go to trial, a lynch mob estimated around 2,000 started to gather at the jail. And soon that number went to 4,000, and then they began to storm the jail. They ended up shooting his brother Robert Edwards in his jail cell. Then they tied his body to a car and drug him through the streets. And then they hung him from a telephone pole in the middle of the town square. And And his body was mutilated so badly they couldn't recognize him. They thought he was another person. And not long after that, the brother Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel were both convicted of the murder. And despite public lynching being outlawed at this point, a crowd between 5,000 and 8,000 white men, women, and children gathered to watch these two teenagers get lynched. Then over the next few months, a white group that called themselves Night Riders, because they only came out at night because deep down they were really scared, but they started giving black residents ultimatums, either move out or be murdered. They even sent 5-year-old and 6-year-old children to people giving them this ultimatum. And these little white kids were telling them leave town or else. And some people did leave, but everybody that chose to stay had their home shot up. They had their property destroyed, including their livestock. And they didn't stop killing people until every black person was ran out of town. And they made it an all-white sundown town until the 1980s, really until today. They took viable farmland that belonged to black residents, and really it was just a land grab because they were jealous of what they were building. And this was by the average white citizen, even though that includes the police and politicians. But these mobs were made up of your average white men and women and children, little white boys and girls. And they've always spilt our blood under the guise of protecting themselves. But after hundreds of years, if we don't understand we have to protect ourselves, then I don't know what it's going to take. In Colorado, a brother Jaherie Wheeler was shot by his neighbor, a white boy Scott Mathews, over a fight about fireworks on the 4th of July. So let's see what led to this brother Jaharie Wheeler getting shot and killed.
There are lots of dogs who live at the Greensview apartment complex. According to the arrest affidavit, Scott Mathews and his girlfriend, Katherine O Neal, seen in this Facebook photo, felt fireworks being tossed in this courtyard by a 14-year-old boy and his 9-year-old sister were upsetting their dog. Soon, Scott and the children's mother were yelling profanities at each other when Mathews pointed a gun at the mom and, according to the affidavit, yelled, "Get the F back," then headbutt at the mom, causing pain and swelling to her upper lip and left eye. That brought 36-year-old Jaherie Wheeler outside, demanding to know why Mathews headbutted Wheeler's girlfriend. Moments later, witnesses say Wheeler punched Mathews in the face. Mathews responded by stumbling backwards, drawing his handgun a second time, and firing one round at Wheeler. Wheeler died from a single gunshot to the chest, and his next-door neighbor still can't believe it.
It makes me angry. An argument is not solved with a weapon.
Evelyn Ortega feels Mathews and his girlfriend were overreacting because fireworks were going off everywhere across the complex.
I don't see why you would come out with a weapon when it's just kids playing with fireworks on 4th of July. Dogs get scared all the time. Mine does too, but you learn to comfort them.
Mathews is a prison guard for the Department of Corrections.
It's a gut punch to us.
Executive Director Dean Williams is Mathews' boss. He spoke to Fox 31 a day after the shooting.
Even while this was off-duty conduct, it still impacts us because we hold ourselves to a very high standard.
It's heartbreaking because you don't know what to say to the family. You don't know what you're going to say to the 14-year-old when you see him again because he lost his dad in front of him.
Mathews has been charged with second-degree murder. He made his first court appearance this morning and is now being held on a $100,000 bond. The Department of Corrections has suspended Mathews without pay. His girlfriend did not answer the door when we knocked, but she was also carrying a gun that night, and she also works at the Denver Women's Prison for the Department of Corrections.
Now, this all started because a young 14-year-old brother and his 9-year-old sister, who were minding their own business, shooting fireworks on the 4th of July. So this white woman, Katherine O Neal, went outside to confront and harass these little kids. And mind you, she went outside yelling at them, armed with a gun. So their mom, Shamira Cotton, sees this and went outside to go protect her children. And then she ended up getting into an argument with the white girl. So then the white girl boyfriend, Scott Mathews, come outside, and he gets involved in the argument. Now this white boy came outside with his gun in his hand, pointed at her. And then he ended up headbutting this black woman in her face. And this woman was bleeding, her lip and eye was swelling. And this white boy still waving a gun at her and her children, telling them to get back. And in self-defense, this woman, Shamira Cotton, tried to throw a drink in his face. But then her boyfriend, Jaharie Wheeler, who was in the house cooking, realized something was going on outside. And when he came outside and saw blood coming from his girl's face, he went over and punched this white boy, Scott Mathews, in the face. And as his brother was about to beat him up, this white boy pulled out his gun again and then shot this brother in his chest. And he killed him right in front of his children. And when the police got there, this white boy admitted that he shot him, but he wasn't arrested until the next day on a suspicion of second-degree murder, although he already admitted to killing him. Now, this white boy, Scott Mathews, was a correctional officer, and this white girl who started the whole thing is still a correctional officer. And that goes to show you how a lot of these COs think. Now, this white girl, Katherine O Neal, also pulled out her gun after her boyfriend headbutted this black woman. Like if this black woman defended herself in any kind of way, she was going to shoot her. But she claims she never pointed it at anybody.
Well, folks, another unarmed black American citizen is dead at the hands of a trigger-happy officer. This one took place on the evening of the 4th of July in Aurora, Colorado. You had an off-duty corrections officer, so not even a full-blown police officer, corrections officer, and his girlfriend, who, on the evening of the 4th of July, were angry with their neighbor's 14-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter because they were shooting off fireworks like a lot of people do on the 4th of July. The fireworks were apparently scaring the corrections officer, his small dog. And it's worth noting his girlfriend was also a corrections officer. A man by the name of Scott Mathews, his girlfriend named Katherine O Neal, both corrections officers in the state of Colorado. So they go out there to yell at the children and the mother because the fireworks, again, are scaring their little dog. Scott Mathews, according to the report, headbutts the woman. So this off-duty corrections officer headbutts the woman, at which point Miss O'Neal, also a corrections officer off-duty, pulls out her gun. So you got two white folks, one just headbutted a black woman, the other one sitting there holding a gun in her hand, but she swears she didn't point it at anybody. And at that point, the woman who was just headbutted, her boyfriend comes out, 36-year-old African-American man, and he sees his girlfriend bleeding because this white little wimp just headbutted her. And he goes up and, according to a report again, throws a punch at Mr. Mathews, at which point Mr. Mathews gets his gun out because, you know, when you're sitting around watching TV at home, you always have your gun on you. Shoots him in the chest and he's dead. Now, Mr. Mathews is likely going to be charged with something, and in my opinion, it should be premeditated murder. And here's why I say premeditated and not just, straight up homicide. He went out there with his gun. His girlfriend went out there with her gun, They didn't need the guns. You're already at home. You're relaxing. It's the 4th of July. You're watching TV with your little puppy. Why did you have your gun? You either brought it out there to intimidate or you brought it out there because you knew you were going to end somebody's life. That's premeditation. If you put a second of thought into it, folks, that's premeditation. It doesn't have to be something you plan out for weeks or months. It can be 5 seconds. It could be 10 seconds. It could be him saying, you know what, Catherine, let's go get our guns before we walk out there. That's all you need. But the bottom line is that this 36-year-old unarmed black man is dead. And he's dead because this wannabe Rambo corrections officer was mad that his little dog got scared of fireworks.
Now, this white girl wasn't charged or arrested, but they arrested this white boy of suspicion of second-degree murder. And they set his bail at $100,000. Now, we'll see what they officially charge him with and what kind of slap on the wrist he get. Because situations like this, somehow they could never see a racial motive. They may not know anything about the case, but they know it has nothing to do with race. That's one thing they do know. Just like that old white man who drove his car into a bus stop full of black people, that ain't had nothing to do with race either.
From a tragic scene this morning, 6 people are hurt, 3 of them critically, after a van slams into a Metro Transit bus shelter.
Yeah, this happened just after 9 at the bus stop on Lyndale Avenue and West Broadway Avenue in Minneapolis. Fox 9's Rob Olson is live at North Memorial in Robbinsdale. And Rob, you spoke to witnesses.
Yeah, I tell you what, this was a pretty impactful scene there to a lot of people. A lot of damage there at this bus stop, and a lot of people wondering exactly what happened. Was this an intentional act? Now, we have learned that the driver, identified as an 83-year-old man, has been released from custody pending further investigation. That all 6 people injured in this were adult men. 5 are still hospitalized, 3 of them with critical injuries here at North Memorial.
Just scar boom.
He was across the street at the corner of West Broadway and Lyndale when he heard the crash. A witness who does not want to be identified.
It's come from this Penn gas station. I just heard a scare, boom. So I think like somebody got to a car crash, but I see blood. I just seen a lot of blood.
He then saw bodies under the van, and he knew it was bad.
They hurt real bad. The van was on top of him. He ran over him.
Darnell Lev Jackson was sitting by the bus stop and was one of 6 injured in his arm and his leg. He was the only one who didn't need a hospital. He said the van's driver came by once, then looped through the parking lot and seemed to be targeting the bus stop.
He plotted it out, figured it out, and came back around, saw people in the bus stop, and ran them over. He wanted to do it intentionally.
The driver was taken into custody and cooperating with Metro Transit police. Metro Transit spokesman said before the crash, the driver actually hit a bus on Lyndale.
That van, as he passed, hit the side mirror of the van, backed up, and then moved forward, hit the mirror again. Then, at that time, that van took a right-hand turn onto Broadway, headed westbound, and then crashed into the shelter.
A lot of rumors swirled the scene about what might have happened beforehand, but nothing confirmed by investigators, hoping to figure out here if this was accidental or truly intentional, and if so, why?
Crazy.
Yeah, but again, investigators say it's too early to say exactly what the motive or what the reason was here, if this was accidental or an intentional act. They're still investigating that. At this point, too, 5 still hospitalized, 3 here, as I mentioned, in North Memorial with critical injuries, 2 with non-critical injuries at Hennepin County Medical Center. Metro Transit hopes to release their identities tomorrow morning.
Now, of course, they expect us to believe this is just some kind of coincidence, some kind of accident or mistake, that this white man happened to hit a bus stop full of black people. Now, there are different stories, but all the witnesses say he did it on purpose. He drove around the block once, came back, and then hit him. Now, they say he hit buses before he hit them. And I've even heard they say he was looking for prostitutes, which is a crime in itself. But this old white man ran into a bus stop full of people, injuring 6, putting 5 in the hospital, and 3 critically injured. And then they didn't even arrest this old white dude, just questioned him and let him go. Even when you hit somebody by accident and it's your fault, like this clearly was his fault, you could still be hit with charges like vehicular manslaughter, especially if somebody dies. And some of these people have life-threatening injuries. But of course, this old white man gets a pass and they let him go. But that's because they are on code, something that we need to be. They will deputize each other, they will condone each other's violence, and call it self-defense, saying they fear for their life. Now, we have a history of our blood being shed. If that's not reason enough to defend ourselves, I don't know what is. And we have to learn how to protect each other, especially our women and children. And we have to be careful. They already understand what it is. They know better than we do. We are the ones that have to learn. And at the end of the day, we are all we got. And until we start defending each other, we're going to be in the same situation.
We bring you today to Forsyth County, Georgia, just 30 miles north of Atlanta, which in the past few weeks has gained the reputation of being a hotbed of racism. Here are just some of the images of Forsyth County in past weeks that were broadcast around the globe.
There's no niggers here. Why should they even come, you know? They asked for it. They got it, so why'd they come back, you know?
Somebody tell me, where did the people who come from who were shouting, "Nigger, go home"? They came from where?
Yes, ma'am. They came from, my name's Frank Shirley. I'm the head of the committee to keep Forsyth and Dawson County white.
Let him speak. Please let him speak. He has the right to speak.
Okay, the news media has covered up. There were thousands of white people that came out to join our white people's protest. This is the largest white people's protest against communism and race mixing in the last 30 years. The news media has deliberately covered up the nature of the Brotherhood marchers, many of whom are outright communists and homosexuals, and our organization was the only one that dared take a stand against them. They brought in thousands.
You're not just anti-black, you're also anti-gay, too.
I'm opposed to communism, race mixing, and low morals, and homosexuals are of low morals, in my opinion.
You don't believe that people of other races have the right to live here?
They have the right to live wherever they want to, but we have the right to choose if we want a white community also. That's why we moved here.
You believe? That's what you believe. Excuse me. Why is it that there are people in this county, obviously, who are afraid of black people? What is it you are afraid black people are going to do? I mean, that's what I'd like to know.
I'm afraid of them coming to Forsyth County. I lived in Atlanta. I was born in Atlanta. And in 1963, the first blacks were bused to West Fulton High School. And I go down there now and I see my neighborhood and my community, which was a nice community, a nice neighborhood, and now it's nothing but a rat-infested slum area because they don't care. They don't care. Thank you.
No, wait, stand up, stand up. You know. Do you mean they, us, the entire black race? The entire black race?
Blacks and you have niggers.
What's the difference between a black person and a nigger to you?
I've talked to black people. Black people, they don't want to come up here. They don't want to cause any trouble. That's a black person. A nigger wants to come up here and cause trouble all the time. That's the difference.
Trust me. Don't do her like that. Don't do her like that. Don't do her like that. Oh my God. And you have the nerve to serve our country. What got to do? This is what the got to deal with. Your child is right there. Why you calling me? Your child. Do something. Do something. I promise. This will wait on the parking spot to do. Quit trusting me. Don't put your hands on her like that. Don't do her like that. Oh my God. And you got the nerve to serve our country. This we got to do. This what we got to deal with. Your child is right there. Why you calling me? Your child. Do something. Do something. Please don't.
It is an extraordinary turn of events. The state lawmaker who says a man verbally assaulted her in the Publix checkout line coming face to face with him today. She says he told her to go back to where she came from.
And this humiliating encounter was so upsetting, Representative Eric Thomas turned to Facebook to vent with tears of frustration just streaming down her face. CBS 46's Yasmina Alston was there. She caught this entire confrontation on camera. Now, Yasmina, this man is just denying he ever said that.
Brittany, he is, and that man, his name is Eric Sparks, and he says he was here today to follow police report about the incident. Now, he tells us all of this started because he was upset to see someone in the express lane with too many items. Well, while he was telling us his side of the story, Representative Thomas confronted him. Take a look at this.
So I thought about it for a second, almost walked out, walked back in, went up to the lady, which I did not know her name, did not know her stature as a state legislature or anything, and asked her.
You don't get a spotlight. You don't get anything at all because you degraded me and you berated me, and everybody needs to see
you know
your
it's
face
on camera, right?
Yes, I know it's on camera, and everybody needs to know that what you did to me, and what you did to me as a woman that is 9 months pregnant, and you think you're going to get away with this? No, you're not. You are going to jail.
You're
and
showing
this speaks
yourself.
For every. Oh no, I'm showing myself. This speaks for every black, brown, and any woman that's out there that's 9 months pregnant, and a white man comes up to you and calls you a son of I don't care what you are. Yes, you are.
I'm not
white. If anybody comes up to you and calls you a son of it, I am facing the man that degraded me and berated me, and I'm not crying. No, I'm not. I'm standing right in front of you. And if you know how you made me feel yesterday, if you know how you made my daughter feel.
Back off before I call the police.
Call the police right now because they are looking for you.
I already talked to them. I already talked to them.
It's okay. You feel bad?
You understand you're a liar?
I'm a liar about what?
Everything that happened.
Do you feel bad?
Me telling you to go back where you came from?
Do you feel bad about yesterday?
Did I say that?
Yes, you. Were you serious? Or you didn't say?
Did I say?
What did you say to me then?
Is it on video?
What did you say to me?
I called you a lazy bitch.
Okay, that's all
the
you
worst
did.
thing I said.
That's all you said to me.
Yes.
What you just saw is the confrontation between State Representative Erica Thomas and the man she claims verbally assaulted her in a Cobb County Publix, calling her names and telling her to, quote, go back where she came from. In tears, Thomas first posted about the incident on Facebook.
But I'm 9 months pregnant, and I can't stand up for long.
But the accused man, Eric Sparks, denies telling Thomas to go back where she came from.
It was only about her personally, period. I never said her people, your people, at all. I'm Hispanic. I don't care what she thinks. She's doing it for political purposes, period. Like I said earlier, I'm a Democrat. I will vote Democrat the rest of my life, okay? So to call me what she wants to believe for her political purposes, to make it black, white, brown, or whatever, is so untrue.
Thomas stands by her accusations and now wants to see charges.
He needs to be held accountable because people can't just go out in public areas and berate pregnant women, whether it's because I was pregnant, whether it's because I was black, whether it's because whatever he did, it doesn't matter. He cannot go and just cuss somebody out and take matters into his own hands because he's mad about groceries.
Now, this happened just days after President Trump was criticized for a similar message directed at 4 congresswomen of color. Now, we have requested video of this incident from Publix. We don't have it at this time because Publix says they are cooperating with police. Once we get that, we'll, of course, update you on this story.
Now, this old ass white lady, let me show y'all something. This is what we go through in America. All right, watch this, right? Watch this. Hold on. Look what I'm driving, people. This is what I'm driving. Look what I'm driving. And look what this crazy ass old lady's driving. Look at this crazy ass old lady. And she said not to go a foot next to that piece of crap. Get away from my car.
No, I didn't. I've got a camera too.
Get away from my car. Get away from my car. Get away from my car. Look at this, people. Look at this shit. Look at this shit. Look at this shit. Look at that shit. Hey, yo, you see what we go through out here, man? When you're minding your goddamn business and pumping gas, man. Look at this shit. Look at that shit. Look at that shit. Look at that shit. Y'all see this shit? Look at that. Look at that. 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm pumping gas, minding my own business. This crazy ass. Look at what I'm driving. Look at what I'm fucking driving. I gotta do this. Look at what I'm driving. Look at this shit. And look what that woman driving. And telling me to stay. I should not go a foot next to that shit. Look at that. It's craziness, America. This is America. This is what we fucking go through.
Why did you give me the finger? Why did you give me the finger? Why did you give me the finger?
What?
Why did you give me the finger? My daughter was in his car. She saw you give me the finger. Why did you give me the finger? That had nothing to do with you. Why would you give me the finger with my daughter in the backseat? She's crying her eyes out because a mean-spirited old lady gave her the finger.
Oh, did she throw the
What if I punched you in your
out?
fucking face? Would you like that then? What if I punched you in your fucking face? Would you like it then? Don't give people the fucking finger. I could have been somebody else. I could have shot you in your fucking face. You need to be careful and have respect for others. Me littering doesn't have anything to do with you. Me littering doesn't have anything to do with you. You understand? Your ancestors probably owned slaves. That has nothing to do with you, right? Right? So me littering has nothing to do with you. Don't fucking give me the finger or anybody else. Next time you can get shot in your face.
She said, "Do you have a jacket?" And I said, "No." You know, I'm thinking, what kind of question is that? I'm in Jamaica. So I'm standing there feeling like a complete idiot with this blanket around my waist. I see the tears going down his face, and I was like, oh my God, because I knew it was a set But my son, he doesn't cry often. If your response simply apologize and refund a ticket, then I would be very confident this will continue to happen to other passengers.
Has a history of launching vicious anti-Semitic screeds.
These comments from the White House are disgraceful and disgusting, and the comments are racist. How shameful to hear him continue to defend those offensive words, words that we have all heard him repeat not only about our members, but about countless others.
Give this guy some attention.
This guy's getting crazy.
What are you mad for? What are you mad for? I'm mad at you, nigga. Don't touch
Whoa,
me.
hey.
Why
you getting crazy, man?
Why you fuck Donald Trump, nigga?
You're not even supposed to be parked right there.
Fuck Donald Trump. Fuck Donald Trump. Give him reason. You don't like my skin, nigga. That's why, nigga. That's why, nigga.
Hey, why are you assaulting people, bro?
Fuck Donald Trump. That's a lie.
Hey, you're crazy.
Stop believing in the lie.
See how crazy and violent these people are?
I have a question.
Violent. Trump haters are violent as fuck. He's an old man, bro. What are you doing?
Fuck you and Donald Trump, nigga.
Crazy ass fool. Look, not even supposed to be parked here. Illegally parked. Crazy, you ain't gonna do shit.
You're your president, whether you like that shit or not. If you don't like the president, get the fuck out of my country.
Guess what? Why are you so mad?
About 90% of my diet is raw sheep meat. I'm just somebody living in obscurity, eating my intestine smoothies in my kitchen. My name's Derek Nance. I'm from Lexington in the state of Kentucky. For the last 9 years, I've been sourcing and butchering and eating raw animals, and I've never felt healthier. This is a ram's testicle from a 3-year-old ram. It has a more salty taste. It's not like red meat, it's more of like a seafood almost. Growing up, I just had the standard American diet, had allergies and headaches and asthma and other signs of, food intolerance issues where I noticed certain foods were really giving me trouble.
I'm about to knock you out. Hey, what, you want to talk shit, nigga? Fuck you up, nigga. Hey, fuck you, bitch. Fuck you. Fuck you, nigga. What? I knock you out, bitch. Hey. Shut up, nigga. You want to talk shit? You want to walk by and talk shit and peck me, man? Get the fuck out of here, nigga. Disrespect me, man. You want to be a victim? Now you want to get the fuck out of my face, nigga. Get the fuck out of here. I'll knock you out too, nigga. Nigga, I'm gonna show you what real American shit do. I'll knock you out. Don't ever disrespect me, bro. Don't ever fucking disrespect me, my nigga. Don't ever. You want to bleed the...
All right, and we back on the forecast. And I want to say RP to the brother Jaherie Wheeler, to the brother Eric Garner. And even though the brother David Collie is paralyzed, I'm glad he's still alive to tell his story. And RP to all our people who have faced injustice. And we have no business asking for an apology, asking for equality, when we need to be demanding justice. But the only way we can get it is if we're all on code. They're not just going to give up a system designed to benefit them. They have taken the enemy's necessary approach from day one. They'll tell you in a heartbeat, liberty or death. And for us to get out of the situation we're in, we have to respond with more urgency than they do. It's been hundreds of years. There should be no more surprises. We understand what we have to do. Now we just have to do it. And when we realize we don't have any other choice, then we'll see they can't stop us, and they never could stop us. That's the reason why they turned to violence in the first place. And once we stop allowing that, and we're the only people that can stop it, and we don't allow it to happen anymore, then we'll be able to build the institutions that we need to put our children in a better position and to protect us as a whole. Now, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're going to keep falling for anything.